Commissioner Peirce, let's talk about the Securities Act of 1933, because this was the landmark legislation that defined how we think of modern securities. Can you paint a picture of the United States at this time in history, why the Securities Act was created and why it should still hold today?
Well, the Securities and Exchange Commission and the foundational laws that brought us into existence and that now we administer came out at a time when we'd had the Great Depression, and there was a lot of concern around a number of the things that we've talked about, including that some people had more information than others when they were investing in companies. And so the idea is to provide for the SEC to play a role in providing disclosures to investors, making sure that investors are getting the disclosures they need before they purchase an interest in a company.
You've done a good job showing us the need for information symmetry as opposed to information asymmetry. When this legislation was created in the 30s, obviously information moved in a radically different way than it does today. So what is the path toward updating these laws in light of new information technologies? How, in your opinion, might that come about?
I think the laws have served us well over time, even as things have changed, and there's a fair amount of flexibility actually built into the legal framework. So I think that has been helpful. Now, of course, everything moves much faster. Trading moves much faster than it used to. Information moves faster. There's more access to information. It's easier to find information now than it ever was. So I think it's fair for us to be asking periodically, should we be updating our laws? And I do think that crypto gives us a number of opportunities to ask whether the laws are working as they should be. But I don't know that we need to do a massive rewrite of our securities laws simply in response to the speed with which information moves. I think we can think more generally about whether we want to give more people access to the private markets. That's something that I've talked a fair amount about, just in terms of allowing more of the population to participate in the private markets where a lot of the activity is now, as opposed to forcing everyone, retail investors, to really concentrate their investment in the public markets where we really govern the disclosure of information. We, the SEC, govern the disclosure of information. So there's an argument to be made that as people are able to do their own research and able to find a lot of information, that maybe we should open the doors to more access to those private markets. That would be quite a shift in what we've done. So that would require some discussion, not only at the SEC, but in the broader public.
In other words, today, it's more difficult for ordinary investors, retail investors, to take part in some of these private investments because those are usually reserved for larger institutional or accredited investors. So the idea might be to open that up more to individual investors, especially as we're all able to get more of that information today on the internet and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have this framework where if you're offering a security, if you're trying to raise money from the general public, you typically have to do that through the public markets, which means that you're subject to a whole set of rules. If you want to raise money in the private markets, you're subject to fewer rules and requirements, but your population from which you can raise money is limited to, as you said, institutional investors or accredited investors, which mean they have high income or are wealthy. And a lot of people have pushed back on that and said, well, wait a minute, I want to be able to invest in some of these other kinds of investments in the private markets, because there's a lot of investment activity now in the private markets. And so people have said, why do I have to be rich or have a high income in order to do that. I can show you in some other way that I'm a sophisticated investor. I can show you that maybe I've studied about investing in college, or I have industry experience, so let me invest in this industry. And so there's a conversation now about whether we should open up the accredited investor category to a new set of sophisticated investors who show their sophistication through some other way than just wealth or income.
Instead of investor accreditation, in other words, we might have something like an investor certification. Take some kind of test showing that you have indeed mastered fundamental investing concepts. Is that right?
Right, and we opened the door to that with a rulemaking that we did a couple of years ago, where we said if people want to come in and tell us about certifications or an education program and get approval from us to allow that to be a way for people to get their accredited certification, then we're open to doing that. So far, we haven't actually done it, but at least we open the doors to the possibility.